Okay, what do we know about this Shane Wright guy? What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, where unfortunately we do have another franchise record, as the Kraken have now broken their previous record for longest losing streak as they lose their 7th consecutive game, this one to the Dallas Stars, 5-2. But you know what? Honestly, even though the Kraken are, well, let's face it, they're bad, or at the very least their record certainly isn't. That says something about the team at the very least, especially with the Seahawks season ending sooner than I think we were expecting that to happen this season. It's just nice to have a professional sports team, or at least a major professional sports team to watch in between the end of Seahawks season and the start of Mariners season for the first time in 14 years. And I know there's some of you Sounders or Storm or T-Birds fans out there who might not be super happy about me saying that, but I think you know what I mean. So yeah, at least to me, I can definitely say that it's better to have a bad team to watch for these next few months than no team at all. Plus, as far as the future of the team is concerned, especially with this Pacific Division looking more competitive than I think anyone expected it to, it certainly is better for the Kraken long term for them to be potentially fighting for that first overall pick in the lottery than to be a fringe playoff team that just misses and end up somewhere in the middle, especially with a guy like Shane Wright at the top of it. And speaking of potential draft picks in the future of the team, it is worth pointing out that Matty Beniers got not only named to Team USA, but has also been nominated for the Hobey Baker Award, which is basically like hockey's Heisman. Now, it's not quite as prestigious as the Heisman for a couple of reasons. One, not as many schools play hockey, and for hockey, college is not the only breeding ground for talent for the NHL like college football is for the NFL. But still, both are pretty big honors for him, and certainly a sign that he definitely is having a very good season in his last year at Michigan before he does join the Kraken and hopefully help out with some of these scoring issues that they've been having. And even outside of Beniers, as they mentioned during the broadcast, a couple other Kraken draft picks from this last draft have also had pretty good seasons in the amount of hockey that they've been able to play. Riker Evans, for one, has been able to play a little bit more and has been almost a point-per-game player through 31 games in the WHL. Meanwhile, Ryan Winterton hasn't played quite as much, but in the one OHL game he has played recently, he did get 5 points in that one game with a goal and 4 assists. So, yeah, I mean, the future could still be bright. Unfortunately, though, getting back to this game against Dallas, one of the youngest players that's actually playing for the Kraken right now in Morgan Geekie was out for this game as he is day-to-day with an upper body injury, which, again, with him missing this game and being listed as day-to-day, I wouldn't necessarily think that it's super likely that he plays tomorrow in the second half of the back-to-back in St. Louis, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. And as we get into the game, it became clear fairly early on that this was probably not going to be Seattle's night, again against one of the better home teams in the NHL in Dallas. But still, the Kraken came out looking pretty flat in this one, which would be somewhat understandable if it was the second half of a back-to-back, but considering this was off of at least a day's rest and just the second game that the team has played in almost 2 weeks, I think that they should have been coming out certainly with a little bit more energy than what they showed. And again, 50 seconds in, the second shot on goal ends up in the back of the net. It does take a bit of a lucky bounce as it ends up going off of the foot of Roope Hintz and into the net past Grubauer, but it still is not a good start for the Kraken. And as far as the fact that this one, again, admittedly went in off of a bit of a lucky bounce, just a couple minutes later, that did somewhat even out for Grubauer and the Kraken, as another shot on the Kraken net rebounds off Grubauer and bounces just over a Dallas stick, or at least enough where he couldn't get a good shot off on what was, at that point, a pretty open goal and an easy tap-in if the puck would have been easy enough to handle, which, again, this one just kind of balances out that early luck, as the Kraken were definitely feeling the pressure of the Stars at this point in the game. A little while later in the period, though, Dunn does draw a penalty, so the Kraken are going to get a chance to even things up on the power play. And while it does take them a second to actually get into the offensive zone while they're on the power play, once they're there, they make quick work of this one on a beautiful passing play. This play all starts with the fancy puck handling, and I specifically say puck handling rather than stick handling on this one because, again, the nicer move that McCann makes here is with his skate and not the stick itself, so I think it works. I don't know, you let me know if puck handling makes sense here or not. Either way, for McCann coming into this game, he actually had already, with his goal in the last game, equaled the number of goals that he had in the last 2 seasons, with his 14 goals 2 years ago coming in 66 games, his 14 goals last year coming in 43, and this year, he got his 14th goal last game in just 29 games for the Kraken. Though here, he ends up picking up an assist, his 8th of the season. Either way though, he continues the great season that he's having for the Kraken, and continuing to show why he definitely needs to be one of, if not the #1 priority for this team, to get re-signed before free agency, as he's definitely looking like the type of guy that could be a top 6 forward franchise type of player for years to come. However, back to this game specifically, just a couple minutes later, the Stars are able to take the lead right back. I mean, at least it was a couple minutes later, not a couple seconds later, but still, a shot from the blue line goes wide of the net, but it bounces right off the end boards, right back next to the net, where Joe Pavelski is able to put in a pretty easy tap-in goal on what's basically an empty net, as Grubauer isn't able to get back where he's still stuck at the top of the crease. Now, again, with the first goal that the Kraken let up, that one was pretty much just a lucky bounce. There really wasn't a whole lot more Grubauer could have done about it, and the guy that it bounces off of in Hintz was pretty well defended, so it's just the kind of thing that's going to happen in hockey from time to time, so you move on from that. But with this one, yeah, there's some things that could have been done better here. First of all, defensively, you can't let a guy who's leading the team in scoring like Joe Pavelski just sit right on the back door without anybody contesting him or trying to lift his stick or defend him in really any way whatsoever. Meanwhile, with Grubauer, you would like to see him, even though he's up at the top of the crease because the puck's at the top of the zone, and taking away the angles in that way is what a goaltender's supposed to do in that situation, you'd like to see him read that the shot is going wide of the net and get back to cover the post so that Pavelski doesn't have an open net to shoot on. Instead, Grubauer goes into the butterfly on the shot thinking that it could be coming on goal, which means that he doesn't have time to get back to the net and to the post before that puck bounces out to Pavelski and he's able to put it into the net. So this one is pretty much just bad positioning by the Kraken all around. But even with all that being said about those first 2 goals, there is one thing that they both shared in common, as they pointed out on the broadcast during the first intermission. And that's the fact that both of these first 2 Dallas goals come shortly after faceoffs won by the Stars in the Kraken defensive zone. And both of those times, the reason there was a faceoff in the Kraken end was because of ill-timed and honestly somewhat unnecessary icings by the Kraken. So, for one thing, you gotta be a little bit more careful with the puck and not ice it too many times in the first place. And for another, you definitely have to be better than the Kraken were early on at winning those defensive zone faceoffs. Granted, the Kraken were actually able to at least correct that second thing, as they end up bouncing back from a pretty bad faceoff rate at the start of this game to end up winning the faceoff battle 34-32 by the end of the game. Obviously, it doesn't really make a difference on the scoreboard at the end either. And that's due in part to the fact that, unfortunately for the Kraken, things were only going to get worse before the end of the first period, as just a minute after the second Dallas goal goes in, they are headed to the power play when Larson sends a puck over the boards for delay of game, and then a minute into the Dallas power play, Soucy also heads to the box on a hooking call. It's now 5-on-3, and the Stars make pretty short work of that, as they are able to capitalize, as any team should, with a minute of 5-on-3 time, and the score is now 3-1. Fortunately, at least, the Kraken are able to kill off the remaining minute and 42 seconds of the second power play, but still at this point the damage is pretty much done. The start of the second is looking a little bit more back and forth. The Stars are still getting the better of the opportunities, but the Kraken are definitely looking better 5-on-5 than they did in the first. And that all leads up until about 5.5 minutes in, when Eberle behind the Stars net is able to pick up and catch a puck as it's rolling and bouncing along the top of the boards where the boards meet the glass. There's a little ledge there that's sometimes hard to notice until you see a puck rolling along it like this one was. Either way, Eberle's able to glove it, drop it to his stick, and somehow shovel a beauty of a pass through basically the entire Dallas defense and somehow over the outstretched stick of Oettinger all the way across to McCann, who's left all alone, lost in the defense, and he makes no mistake of getting that puck into the back of the net before Oettinger can get back to the other side. For McCann, it's now his 15th goal of the season and the most goals that he's had in any of the last 3 years. And once again, already for the second time this game, this Kraken goal is all started with some very nice puck work. This time it's Eberle with the glove to get it to his stick, and from there he makes the beautiful assist that makes the goal happen. From there, the rest of the second period is still pretty back and forth and evenly played between the two teams. Grubauer, a few minutes after this Kraken goal, does have to make a very nice save on a breakaway by Pettersson. A short breakaway, but a breakaway nonetheless that comes off of a bad defensive zone turnover by the Kraken. Still, Grubauer, nice save here. And then at the other end, Oettinger responds with a big save of his own. This one on a Donskoy shot coming off of a rebound, as Donskoy still for the life of him cannot find the back of the net, still looking for that first goal as a Seattle Kraken. And it's still definitely not for lack of trying, but you could tell as he went to the bench after this Oettinger save that he's pretty frustrated and maybe a little defeated by how this season has started for him. Then, as we get into the final minutes of the period, it's Dallas on a partial breakaway this time, as Gio makes a physical play using some of his stick, or quite a bit of his stick, to help shut this one down. Grubauer comes up with the save, and the fans are not particularly happy with the no call on Gio here, as he does take the Dallas player to the boards with him. And that unrest in the Dallas crowd is only amplified when right back the other way, McCann does draw a call at the other end of the ice, sending the Kraken to the power play. And I don't know if the Dallas penalty killing it was drawing the energy from the crowd at this point in the game, though their home record versus their away record so far this season would certainly point to that potentially being a part of it. Either way, the Kraken power play this time goes absolutely nowhere, as it is killed off very effectively by the Dallas penalty kill without allowing a single shot on goal, or really even the threat of a shot on goal from Seattle. And then, to make matters even worse for the Kraken, right after their completely ineffective power play comes to an end and Dallas gets their fifth guy back on the ice, Pavelski, for the second time this game, gets completely lost in the defense, sets up shop right on the back door next to the goal, where he's able to collect a pass and tap it into the basically empty net to give Dallas the 4-2 lead and tie up this second period 1-1. With this Stars goal, even though it does happen in a slightly different way from how their second goal did, it's born from a lot of the same aspects, especially as far as the Kraken are concerned, where once again, Grubauer is out of position, having drifted too far away from the net, especially considering where the pass ends up coming from. But for the defense, again, you cannot let Joe Pavelski stand wide open, completely uncontested, right next to the open net. Once again, the Kraken lose the Stars' leading scorer, and he makes them pay for it. And as for Pavelski, this is now his second goal of the night, and second, very easy tap-in goal on basically an empty net. He would also end up getting an assist on all three of the other Dallas goals to have a 5-point night. So yeah, it's pretty clear the Kraken had no idea what to do about dealing with him. To the Kraken's credit in this one, they do at least respond well in the third and pretty much dominate the third period start to finish. Or at least almost the finish. The last few seconds are a little different, but we'll get there. Right out of the gates in the third, though, Seattle was clearly eager to try to come back in this game and make it interesting late, as they were getting a lot of pressure off and shots off on goal, spending almost the entire period in the offensive end of the ice. Eberle has a very nice shot early on. The Kraken do end up getting a power play where McCann himself alone has 3 shots, as the Kraken power play really looked very good, just couldn't get on the board. Donato, late in the period, has a sweet-looking spinning wraparound chance that's saved. Then it's Appleton with a rebound chance right off of that also gets saved, and ultimately the Kraken pretty much just get goaltended by Ottinger in this third period as he completely stands on his head to bail the Stars out of what could have been a pretty ugly third period for them if it wasn't for him. Finally, the Kraken do end up pulling Grubauer with about 3 minutes left in the game because what the heck, why not? You're down 2 goals and you're going to lose the game anyway. It's still potentially something they could come back from 6-on-5. Still pretty unlikely, but it's a better chance 6-on-5 than 5-on-5. Either way, a minute after Grubauer's pulled, Dallas finds the back of the empty net to make it 5-2. And then they do push for 6-2 late. Grubauer collects a few pretty spectacular, though meaningless saves. And this game does end 5-2 in favor of the Stars. For the Kraken, the story of this game is, well, for one, not being able to stop Joe Pavelski in any shape, way, or form, but moreover, another slow start and terrible first period, as the first period continues to be the worst period for the Kraken and one that they cannot seem to figure out how to get on the better end of in any kind of consistent manner, consistently falling behind early and then having to figure out how to claw their way back as the game goes on. And again, as this game goes on, after the Stars do dominate that first period, building that 3-1 lead, the second is pretty back and forth, and then the Kraken dominate the third, with the obvious difference being that in the period that the Stars dominate, they are able to build a lead, while in the period the Kraken dominated, they weren't able to get on the board, which again is starting to become another problem for this team on top of the goaltending and inconsistent defensive responsibility. Outside of that, though, I do think it's at least worth mentioning how Dallas was able to get control of that first period and, again, in at least parts of the second. And that was through aggressive forechecking against the Kraken, really pinning them into the offensive zone and not giving them much space to handle the puck, which is something that we've seen throughout this season from time to time. Other teams have a lot of success doing against Seattle. The Winnipeg and certainly that Pittsburgh game, both at home, definitely stand out as a couple of games where we saw quite a bit of that forechecking and not giving the Kraken very much space to work with. Especially considering how physical of a team the Kraken have been for most of this season, it's kind of surprising to me how effective and aggressive physical style against them has been. But again, it continues to be something that we should be looking for. And as the Kraken go into St. Louis against the Blues tomorrow night, or again, tonight as you're watching this, yeah, that's probably something they're going to be seeing again against a team that likes to do that. And before we close this one out, speaking of that St. Louis game, if you are watching this the same day that happens, the day after the Dallas game, I will be streaming during the game against the Blues. Again, another one of those watch-along style streams, so do feel free to come in and hang out for that stream and ask any questions or just hang out in the chat. And we'll hope that the Kraken can get off of this losing streak and get a win against the 4th best home team in the NHL. But win or lose, we'll watch it together. And until then, if you have made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. If you did like or enjoy this video, there are buttons for that kind of stuff down below that I would appreciate you using. And until next time, stay safe out there, be good to each other, and go Kraken.